Hi there, welcome to Active Intelligence. I'm Aaron Ironside. I hope you've got half an hour to spare. That's about how long it will take us to look at another social issue from a variety of points of view, where the idea is we'll offer some balance rather than some bias. And today, a problem close to the hearts of many who would love to climb their way onto the property ladder. Can it be done? We find out today on Active Intelligence. On today's episode, I caught up with Jahdine Tapara. She is a mum and a te reo teacher in the Waikato, and she has bought her very first home. How did she do it? Particularly after being targeted by loan sharks while she was at university. We'll find out about that a little later on, but first of all, let's talk about the issue. It's not a surprise to many of us. If you have young adult children who are desperate to get onto the property ladder, you'll have heard their lament. Is it even possible? And you don't even have to be young to wonder if you'll ever own a home, which is why, of course, some people are having to be incredibly creative to get on that first rung of the property ladder.
Look, we say to people, don't give up on your dream of owning your first home. You've got to look at it slightly differently, I think, than what we did, 10, 20 years ago. You're not going to have the full section or the villa in central Auckland. So looking more on the outskirts of the major cities, if you can work from home, and that's become, much more common practice now since COVID, that people and the technology can actually work from home. So look at sort of more of the outskirts places to buy. Look at options such as going in with friends, family, flatmates. We're seeing a lot more of that happening at the moment. We're also seeing some schemes come into play, kind of shared equity, so you can kind of own a portion of a house. So it's about being flexible around the type of property, possibly starting off with an apartment or a townhouse, and then looking at it as a foot on the property ladder with a view to actually move up down the track.
And Leslie, what would your advice be to those who have kept trying and not managed to get that property?
Look, we just say to people, don't give up. We're still seeing people get into their first homes. The major thing that we're actually, I suppose, trying to encourage people is, first of all, get rid of the debt. That seems to be one of the biggest obstacles at the moment for people getting into houses. We did a survey recently across our membership base, and it was around about $9,000 worth of debt that people were carrying on average. So that will reduce your lending by about $50,000. So in order to be the best customer that you can be for the bank, reduce your lending. Be flexible, keep going for your dream, don't give up on that dream, but do your homework and become an absolute expert in buying your first home, and also become an expert customer for the bank. So reduce that debt, become a really good customer of the bank, with the view of actually making it easier for yourself to get the lending.
So maybe shared equity and some other more innovative approaches are what's required. Of course, it is debt that is the reason that many people are never quite able to get onto the property ladder. It's a bad look, of course, to the bank, but practically speaking, of course, many people are so focused servicing their debt, they never get round to saving. And it would turn out, it seems, that those right at the bottom of the property pile, those with the least chance of getting on the property ladder, are even more likely to be caught up in debt as they get targeted by loan sharks or payday lenders who are willing to take everything just to supposedly help them get by.
So this is my car, my pride and joy.
Many Kiwis, like solo mum of four Angela, are left with no choice but to use a third-tier lender.
And what does the letter there say, Angela?
It's a letter basically saying that if I don't pay the fees that are owing, within 2 days they're going to repossess this car. And that means that I'll have no transport.
How much money have you got to find to be able to keep this car?
$1,700.
Can you find that in 2 days?
Not at all, no way.
And what will happen to you once this car goes? How will you get on with your life?
Well, I won't be able to get my kids off to school.
It's a nice car.
And with it,
She first borrowed money from a finance company some 5 years ago.
This is my only form of transport. I wanted to get Christmas presents for my kids, so I just wanted a bit of help along the way. So from what I remember, I think I borrowed probably about $700 on my first visit there.
This particular company were only too happy to help with a 35.5% interest rate. But with only part-time sporadic work and 4 children to support, Angela quickly fell behind. She ended up in arrears. By late last year, she owed the finance company $5,300. Yet still, she was given another $1,200.
With that, the original loan is refinanced, which means a settlement fee is applied and then a re-establishment fee is also applied, plus a payment protection plan that doesn't always suit the needs of the borrower.
My dad passed away. At the time, we weren't settled in well at the time, so I was quite in need of the money to go back home, since I was the only child and I had to go back home for my dad's funeral. So
Pacific Island families are especially at risk. Many send cash back to their home countries. Some can't afford it.
I ended up going to the finance company, where I spent like only 30 minutes to get the loan approved.
Sarah took 2 loans out with 2 different finance companies.
How much interest did you end up paying on those loans?
It ended up like almost double the amount that I borrowed.
The loans she took out carried a 29.5% per annum interest charge. When she returned from Samoa, she simply couldn't afford to pay. Her family moved into emergency accommodation and sought financial help.
I was able to consolidate all into one non-interest loan from them, from the microfinance.
In this case, help was at hand from the Ngā Tangata Microfinance Trust. It provided Sarah with a way out. The trust was set up to offer safe, fair and affordable credit loan options with no fees. Its goal, a fairer financial system for all New Zealanders. But despite being helped by Ngā Tangata, the finance companies weren't finished there.
When I paid off all my debts from them, I kept on receiving calls from them, like, oh, you can come and we can offer you this amount, you can, whatever time you need, just come.
We're definitely going to have to tighten up continually on those payday lenders and loan sharks. They are targeting the vulnerable and, of course, helping the poor get poorer and taking what little they have from them, making it nigh but impossible to ever get onto the property ladder. That is a real problem and a reminder that the market is not interested in helping people, but helping itself. How do you help yourself? Well, it turns out, of course, that the government initiative that most of us consider the pathway to comfort in retirement, KiwiSaver, might actually be the pathway to getting onto the property ladder.
Yeah, it's very topical at the moment with a lot of people looking to get into their first home, especially in this market, and it actually can be quite daunting to think about how much you need in order to be able to put down your deposit. One of the best things you can do is actually start early. So as soon as you start your first job, get signed up to KiwiSaver and you don't notice that money coming out of your pay. And it's surprising how quickly that can build up. Then when you are ready to start looking for your first home, as long as you've been in KiwiSaver for 3 years, give your KiwiSaver provider a call and just talk to them about what else that you need to do in order to get that money out.
Fantastic. So say we've managed to successfully purchase our first home and now we need to get back into saving for our retirement. How do we get our KiwiSaver back on track?
Yeah, really important to review it after you have bought your first home, because KiwiSaver is really for your retirement. So you need to reset your goals and just think about making those regular contributions, because that way you'll build up your plan again and also you'll qualify for the government contributions each year. But also having a look at your fund choice, because you might have been in something that's a little bit more conservative while you were saving for your first home. Now you might be 20, 30, 40 years away from retirement, so something that's a little bit more of a growth fund might be more suitable. So have a chat to your KiwiSaver provider or get some advice on what the best fund choice is for you.
If you are currently saving for your first home deposit, what should you consider with your KiwiSaver fund?
Yeah, you should probably consider the returns that you're getting on it, because you don't want anything that's going to be too volatile because if we go through something like we've just been through recently, there's a lot of volatility in the market and your KiwiSaver fund can actually drop quite a lot. So you'd want to be in a fund that's actually more stable and a little bit less movement, less tolerance for the market movements.
So there you go. The problem is often debt, and one of the answers is using your KiwiSaver in a more creative way. It's really great that that possibility is there, but do people even know that they can utilise their KiwiSaver to get into their very first home? Well, certainly Jahdine Tapara didn't know about that kind of stuff. She grew up in an environment where there was not a lot of talk about owning a home. In fact, most of the time it would appear they spent more time talking about which was the next rental they would be moving into. And yet this te reo teacher and mum has done it. She's got herself on the property ladder, proven that it can be done. What was the key? Well, I asked her to tell us her story.
Yes, I came from a whānau of 8. And we have a complicated whakapapa, I should say. So I have 3 older siblings. They had a different father, so we all share the same mum, and there's 8 of us. So there was the older siblings' father, then my father, and then the love story happens that my mum returned to her first marriage. They reunited after 14 years. Complicated, but that's our big whānau. We are all one big whānau anyway. Raised in Waikato, Hamilton predominantly. But we had, relocated several times. From memory, I had to count back, and I think there was over 22 homes. Rentals in my lifetime where we had moved between Auckland and Hamilton. And then there's also my own little rental journeys too prior to buying. We were, when I say poor, money-wise, but in saying that we were rich in our culture, and that's one thing Mum started with me. So my 3 older siblings weren't educated in te reo Māori, and so when I was born, Mum, because she also was an adult learner too in her journey, and so I went through kohanga reo and kura kaupapa whare kura, and now teaching within our total immersion Māori kura. And I think part of that too was my drive, although I think I did make my silly mistakes when I turned 18. Come from a really sheltered kura system in a whānau, and then when I went to university, I was like, wow, the world hit me. And it was bicultural, multicultural, and it was a whole nother language when it came to financial literacy.
Well, let's talk about the sort of the result, though, of being raised in a whānau where there are 8 children. One might guess that there wasn't a lot to go around. As you said, you were rich in culture, rich in whānau, but not necessarily being exposed to the idea that you should expect to have much when it comes to finances.
Absolutely. So I think a shoestring budget, I'll put it that way. And pohara too, in a sense where my younger siblings were twins. So my mum had twins, my twin sisters, when she was 42. So there was that as well, I think. Still parenting and with babies at that age for mum, and also not working. And I was still in secondary school when they were born. And those were my crucial years where I really remember us struggling, from worrying about what are we going to eat for dinners the next day, literally living week to week, day to day, to the point where I remember where we had to use pillowcases for nappies for my twin sisters, because that was double of everything, and it was milk powder, and you got your treasures that you had to cover as well. So, oh my goodness. And I think about it, I'm like, wow.
If I had met you that first year at university and asked you, do you think you'll ever own a home after having been through so many rentals and dealing with such kind of, in a sense, small resources, what would you have said?
Prior to my experiences with loan sharks in the banks and the likes, I was very optimistic. I was very driven, and in that sense, I think one of my best friends. So she came from a privileged home. Parents were still married and they owned homes. And so when I used to go over there, I used to dream like, man, I wish we could, or I want to do the same too. I can remember myself telling myself at that time that I want to do better. I want to do something for myself and my whānau. So having that close friend of mine and staying over at her house is like, wow, is this how it can be? Like, I had a taste of what it was like out of my home too. So I do acknowledge my friend now too for those experiences. Little did she know that it had an effect on me. It had a massive impact on me, because I thought, okay, cool. Because he whānau Māori too. So I thought, oh, wow, it is possible being Māori to be somewhat successful and owning your own home. So that was there. But I guess, so when I started uni at 2000, I finished school 2003, started in 2004, and I was still 17. February came around, which was orientation week at uni, and then I turned 18, and if you're familiar with Waikato University, they have the banks on site.
Oh, okay.
And so in the student village where you go for cafeteria to eat, and then they were just out there, here, get a student overdraft. And I'm like, wow, what is that? It's like, you get $1,000 and you don't have to pay it back. Well, your money goes in and then it kind of takes away, but you can keep using it. So I was thinking, oh, that sounds easy, sounds cool, and not too... Yeah, so then there was that, and then when you opened up your bank accounts, it was a student account then, and which offered your credit card at the time, your student overdraft, and so naturally, I go and have tutu and go and sign up to all these silly things.
What had you been told about things like overdrafts? Did you feel like you were told about money when you were growing up?
No, not enough. I never knew what an overdraft was, other than my mum complained because we were always in the deficit. So we were always in the red, or she had negative amounts of money in her account. So that's all I knew about overdrafts. I didn't see it as a semi-loan.
You mentioned the loan sharks. Was there kind of a low point in your story?
Yes. So, and this all happened in a year. So I did open an account. Following the closing of National Bank, I opened up account with the credit union, and at the time it was like, get $5,000 loan and it's $40 a week. And I thought, okay, I can kind of manage that over 4 years, a 3 to 4 year contract. And that happened. So with that, I bought my first car, and it was through the Turner's car auction. So it's just off the lot. It wasn't through an auction, and it was $1,900. So that was out of my $5,000. And then 2 weeks later, I was in a car accident. Someone ran a red light and wiped it out. So it was written off. So I had to go through that too, and I only had like minimal amounts. I also moved out and flatmated as well in my first year of uni. So I thought that's what the $5,000 was there for, to get me out, buy me a new bed, and set up in that student life. So when I lost my car, I went on a bit of a downer. And then I had just a little bit, like $1,500, so I found another car just to kind of get me from A to B. And I learned my lesson with insurance then, that if I was insured, then I would have been covered.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was the spiral. That was the beginning. And then months later, my mum and twin sisters went over to families in Melbourne to a 50th birthday. It was a combined birthday of my auntie and uncle in Australia. And to the point where she was there for 2 weeks. Fortunately, my auntie actually flew them over, and then they were semi-stuck there. So it was kind of like, how were they coming home? And I just, silly me again, I just thought, okay, I'll get a loan to kind of pay off another loan, or to pay off the first loan, but enough to have a little bit more just to get my family home. And there was a couple of hundreds of dollars left. I said, well, while I'm bringing my family home, I might as well come over and have a little bit of a holiday, which was a weekend. Yeah.
Some would say you were learning the hard way.
A very hard way, yeah. But I just thought
the turning point. When did your story start turning and you started actually learning and making the kinds of choices that could change your future?
Yeah, so it had a massive impact on me too, I think, mentally as well, and during my first years of studies. So I finished my first year, and I was into my second year, and I just had enough, and I thought I just needed a bit of a gap year and just to work, because I had to work more than I could focus on studying to try and pay off some existing debt. So I had a gap year, and actually went to Australia to see if I could try and find work over there, but I only lasted like 2 months and I came home. I decided to finish off my studies and knuckle down. Look out to and knuckle down. So I kind of just got through my studies. I thought, look, if I can get through my studies, start working, teaching, and then I can start paying these off. But I was paying it off bit by bit with at the time I wasn't a student allowance because I finished halfway through a year, so I had to do a half a year on living costs, so that kind of added to my student loan. Yes, and so once I finished, once I graduated, and I also relocated to Gisborne. That allowed me to work during the day and study by night, because when I was in Hamilton, I was fixed to attending on campus, and it only left me the afternoons really to work, which was telemarketing at the time, like Digipol and the likes. So when I relocated to Gisborne, I had teacher aiding jobs and youth working roles as well. So that really helped me during my last year of studies, because I was able to work properly, pay debt, but then it took its toll on me while studying in the evening. But that's the commitment I made.
When did you start saving for a house? When did you start thinking the house was a possibility?
Oh, later, like 10 years later. Kind of lived life for a bit, and after the passing of my mum, which was in 2010, I was just a beginning teacher I was in my first year of my full-time permanent teaching role. So that took its toll on me. I guess 3 years after was a bit of a blur, to be honest, following the passing of my mum. And because I was still living in Gisborne at the time, I decided to move home back to Hamilton. 7 years after the passing of my mum, I gave birth to my first daughter. So I think that's when I realised, I really need to do something. I really need to knuckle down now. And I was 27 at the time when I had my firstborn. And so I was saving, but I didn't really have any saving goals. I didn't know. I just thought, okay, I'll open up a separate account and I'll just put money in there and then use it for emergencies or something like that.
So where did the plan come from? How did you work out how you were going to do it?
Yes, so I was my second born. So when I was, I just had my second born, my daughter, and I was on maternity leave. Fortunately, I was on a study maternity leave, so I was released for a year to do my postgraduate studies and my master's. And it was during that time that I attended iwi driven financial literacy workshop. And that's when I learned. Like, that's when the light bulb moment happened. Like, okay, so all these years I've been kind of doing it wrong. And so 2017 was when I first started to knuckle down, save, restarted my KiwiSaver, because at the time I just thought, no, I need all my money. Like, I didn't think I was going to buy a house. And so if I had started my KiwiSaver in 2007, when it first came out, when I was first teaching, I would have had I would have had a really healthy deposit. So still kicking myself, and I preach to everyone I know. KiwiSaver, mark it up to 10%, and just let it build, let it grow. I think in the back of my mind, I was still thinking, man, my credit is shot. I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I just said, you know what? No, actually, I'll go and see a broker, a financial advisor, and see what. And she was really helpful. She goes, actually, no, you're not too bad. And so we made a plan. I just grew my savings, and I was a natural Scrooge, I guess. After my early mistakes, I became a natural Scrooge with my money, and I decided never to go down that track again. So I paid them off as well. And then I've started to learn about growing and about separating your finances too.
So you've done it. You've got yourself in your first home. It's an incredible accomplishment if you really only started back in 2017.
2017.
What are you going to tell your beautiful kids who've been sort of desperately want your attention tonight? But what will you tell them as they grow that you wish you'd been told?
I've already told. I speak to my daughters now. What is your first mission? Hoko whare, to buy a house. And I said, yes. So I'm going to I've planted that seed. As they grow, and as they age, and that's when I'll be kind of being a bit more specific around everything. You're going to be approached by this. You are going to be persuaded by all these $40 a week signs of just $5,000 loans, easy, simple. But hopefully I'm in a position where they can actually come to me and go, what do I do here? And just having that with that mum.
Isn't it amazing how that vision can be so important, so compelling? I love the elements of Jahdine's story that are worth kind of noting. That she did actually have hope for owning a home. That it was good for her to know another Māori family who did own a property. It gave her that sense that it could be done. That's how important aspiration can be. But it wasn't enough, was it? What was really needed wasn't aspiration. She had that when she went to university. What she lacked was information. She really didn't understand how the payday lenders would work, how even car insurance worked. Clearly, she did not have enough information yet to really thrive in the world economically speaking, although she was thriving in other ways. But information. Firstly, it was the course that she attended that was put on by the local iwi. That was a good initiative. Then the financial advisor who was able to answer that question for her. Was she, in fact, in a position to buy a house? She didn't believe it. Or she needed information. This is one of those moments where information is most certainly power. And we want to see more people get empowered. So I wonder if the answer today is that we need to make sure actually that at high school that maybe we need to ditch things like what they used to call home economics, how to cook, and actually have classes that are about more sort of life economics. How does insurance really work? What's the best way to save up for a house? How do you use your KiwiSaver in creative ways? How do you team up with other people to get what you want? Because that lack of information is meaning that people lack vision, they lack a pathway to the life that they want. And so, instead of a plan, all they're left with is a dream, and ultimately, those loan sharks will turn that dream into a nightmare if you give them half a chance. What's your experience? Heard some innovative ways of getting into the property market, climbing that property ladder? Get in touch. The website is activeintelligence.nz, and of course hit that subscribe button and we'll make sure that every episode comes right into your inbox. We'll see you next time on Active Intelligence.